My spouse sent a message saying, "I've moved in my boyfriend. Your belongings are in the garage." I responded, "Make yourselves comfortable." Then I contacted the bank to halt the mortgage payments on the house that's solely in my name. 3 months later, her boyfriend was desperately reaching out about a foreclosure warning. I received the text last Tuesday while attending a client meeting. My wife Angela casually ended our 8-year marriage through a smartphone. "Dan, I've brought my boyfriend Jacob here. Your belongings are packed in boxes in the garage. Please don't come by tonight. I need space to sort things out." 34 words. 8 years condensed into a text message during my quarterly review. I excused myself from the meeting to read it again. Angela had seemed distant for months, often working late and going on weekend trips with friends that appeared to be every other week. I suspected something was off, but hoped I was just being overly cautious. It turned out my suspicions weren't strong enough. My reply was straightforward: "Make yourselves comfortable." Then I called my attorney. Here's the thing about our house that Angela seemed to forget. When we purchased it 5 years ago, I was the only one on the mortgage and deed. Angela's credit was damaged from some bad choices in her 20s, and she had no income at the time, so the bank required everything to be solely in my name. We never got around to adding her to the deed later, which turned out to be a blessing. Angela never contributed to the monthly payments either. I took care of the mortgage, utilities, insurance, property taxes, everything. She handled groceries and her personal expenses from her part-time job at the boutique downtown. So, when she decided to move her boyfriend into my house and texted me to leave, she made a significant mistake in understanding who truly owned the property. I drove home that evening to find my truck blocked in the driveway by a beat-up Honda Civic. Jacob, it seemed. Through the front window, I could see them on my couch watching my TV, drinking what appeared to be my beer. It took me 3 trips to load my boxes into my truck. 8 years of marriage reduced to 4 boxes of clothes and personal items. Angela had done a thorough job of erasing me from the space. The garage door was open when I left, and I could see them through the kitchen window cooking dinner together. A real domestic picture. Angela looked happier than I had seen her in months. I spent the night at my brother's place and made some crucial phone calls the next morning. The first call was to the bank. I informed them I was undergoing a major life change and needed to discuss my mortgage options. I didn't go into specifics, just that my housing situation had become unstable. The second call was to my insurance company, canceling the homeowner's policy effective immediately. There was no point in insuring a house I no longer lived in for people not on the policy. The third call was to the utility companies to request service disconnection at the end of the current billing cycle. By Friday, I had moved into a decent apartment near my office. Month-to-month lease, furnished, costing about 40% of what I had been spending on the house payment and utilities combined. Angela called that weekend asking about some bills that had arrived in the mail. "Dan, the insurance company sent a cancellation notice. Also, something from the electric company about service termination. You'll need to take care of those, Angela. I'm not living there anymore. But you always paid the house bills. I only paid them when I lived there and was married to you. Now I don't live there, and we're getting a divorce." Long pause. "So, who's supposed to pay them?" "Whoever's living there, I suppose." I hung up before she could reply. Update 1, 6 weeks later. The last month and a half has taught everyone involved some lessons. Angela and Jacob have been learning about the real costs of homeownership while I've been discovering the advantages of simpler living. My apartment situation is working out perfectly. A 20-minute commute instead of 45. No maintenance issues. No property taxes. I'm saving about $1,500 a month compared to the expenses of the house. Meanwhile, Angela has been calling more frequently about various bills and notices arriving at the house. Week 2 brought panicked calls about the insurance cancellation. Apparently, the mortgage company required continuous coverage and was threatening to purchase much more expensive forced insurance if she didn't provide proof of coverage immediately. "Dan, the bank says they'll buy insurance for $1,800 a year. We were only paying $600. Then you better find your own insurance company." Week 3 was the property tax bill. Apparently, Angela had never realized that homeowners pay property taxes annually, and the assessment was more than she earned in 2 months at the boutique. "Dan, there's a bill here for $4,000 from the county." "What is this?" "Property taxes." "Angela, due every December? $4,000? I don't have $4,000. Then you probably shouldn't live in a house worth $300,000. Week 4 brought the first missed mortgage payment notice. I had stopped paying after the first month, figuring Angela could manage her own housing costs. Dan, there's a letter here from First National about the mortgage payment being late. Okay, what should I do with it? Pay it. I guess you're the one living there, but it's $1,500. I only make $1,100 a month. Sounds like a math problem. Angela, week 5 brought the second missed payment notice. This one mentioned possible foreclosure proceedings if the situation wasn't resolved quickly. Angela called crying. Dan, they're talking about foreclosure. You have to help. I don't have to do anything, Angela. You chose to live there with Jacob. But where would we go? Maybe Jacob has some ideas about that. The irony was perfect. Angela thought she could kick me out of my house and continue enjoying home ownership without any financial responsibilities. Reality was proving to be more costly than her fantasy. Update 2. 3 months later, month 3 brought the serious consequences of Angela's housing arrangement. The bank doesn't play around once you hit 90 days delinquent. The official foreclosure notice arrived in early November. A legal document explaining that the property would be sold at public auction in 60 days unless the full amount owed plus penalties was paid immediately. Angela called in a panic after that one arrived. Dan, this is really happening. They're going to take the house. Houses get foreclosed when people don't pay the mortgage. Angela, basic cause and effect. But I can't afford the mortgage payment even with Jacob helping. Then you can't afford to live in that house. What am I supposed to do? Find somewhere you can afford. What Angela didn't understand was that I had been preparing for this outcome since the day she sent that text. My lawyer had explained the foreclosure timeline and my options as the legal owner. The missed insurance payments had created additional problems. The mortgage company purchased forced insurance at triple the cost and added it to the total amount owed. The unpaid property taxes would become a lien that the new owner would have to resolve. Meanwhile, Jacob was apparently realizing that his romantic gesture of moving in with a married woman came with financial obligations he hadn't anticipated. Dan, Jacob wants to know if there's any way he could take over the mortgage payments. Jacob can want whatever he likes. Angela, the mortgage is in my name and can't be transferred without the bank's approval, which requires credit qualification and income verification. What if we paid you back and you kept making the payments? What if you didn't pay me back and I was still responsible for a mortgage on a house where my ex-wife lives with her boyfriend? She couldn't answer that because there wasn't a reasonable answer. Any arrangement that left me financially liable while they enjoyed the benefits was clearly not in my interest. The third missed payment notice arrived with a firm foreclosure date. January 15th at the courthouse steps. Minimum bid equal to the outstanding loan balance plus fees and penalties. That's when Jacob started calling me directly. Update 3-4 months later. Month 4 brought the foreclosure auction and Jacob's increasingly desperate calls. Turns out he'd been researching foreclosure processes and realized they were about to become homeless. Dan, this is Jacob. We need to talk about this house situation. First time I'd actually spoken to the guy who'd been living in my house and sleeping with my wife for 4 months. What's to discuss, Jacob? Look, man, I know this is complicated, but we need more time to work something out. You've had 4 months. How much more time do you need? I'm trying to get financing to buy the house. Have you talked to any banks about that? Well, not yet, but I've got decent credit and steady work. Good luck with that. Spoiler alert. Jacob's idea of steady work was construction jobs when available, and his credit wasn't nearly as good as he thought. His chances of qualifying for a $250,000 mortgage were essentially zero. But the foreclosure timeline was giving them false hope. People think foreclosure happens overnight, but the legal process takes months and gives homeowners multiple chances to catch up on payments. The reality was setting in, though. Angela had given up her part-time job at the boutique to find full-time work. But even combined with Jacob's irregular income, they couldn't come close to covering the mortgage payment, plus insurance and property taxes. Jacob tried a different approach the following week. Dan, what if we worked out some kind of rental deal? We pay you monthly rent, and you keep the house. What's my incentive to do that, Jacob? You keep your property and get rental income. I don't need rental income from people who ruin my marriage. I need you out of my house. Come on, man. Angela made a mistake, but we're trying to make this right. You're trying to make it work for yourselves. I'm trying to get my property back. The foreclosure sale was scheduled for January 15th. After that, Everyone would have to vacate, and the bank would either resell the property or take ownership. Angela made one last desperate attempt. Dan, what if we got divorced and I somehow kept the house? With what money, Angela? You can't afford the mortgage payments. What if Jacob married me and we qualified together? Jacob can't afford to marry someone with no assets and massive debt any more than you can afford to keep a house you never owned. The math was brutal and simple. The house was worth about $300,000, and the bank was owed $260,000, including penalties and fees. Even if someone could qualify for a new mortgage, they'd need significant cash for closing costs and down payment. Neither Angela nor Jacob had the income, credit, or savings to make any of it work. Final update, 5 months later. The foreclosure sale happened exactly as scheduled. I attended the auction and watched the bank reclaim the property when no qualified bidders emerged. Angela and Jacob had to vacate the week before the sale. They spent their final days desperately searching for apartments they could afford on their combined income, which eliminated most decent options. They ended up in a worn-out duplex across town that costs nearly as much as my previous mortgage payment, but offers about 1/4 the space and none of the amenities. 3 weeks after the foreclosure, the bank contacted me about purchasing the property directly from them. They'd rather sell to someone they know can qualify for financing than deal with the uncertainty of listing it on the open market. I easily qualified for a new mortgage since my income had never changed and my credit remained excellent. The foreclosure didn't appear on my credit report because I wasn't personally liable for the deficiency. The bank absorbed the loss on the unpaid balance. I bought my house back for $275,000, about $25,000 less than its appraised value. The bank wanted a quick sale, and I was a qualified buyer with cash for closing costs. The entire process took exactly 5 months from Angela's text message to me having clear title to the property. Again, my total costs were the down payment on the new mortgage plus 5 months of apartment rent. Compare that to what a traditional divorce would have cost. If Angela had been on the deed, she would have been entitled to half the equity plus potential alimony payments. Instead, she got nothing and learned expensive lessons about the difference between living somewhere and actually owning property. Angela thought she could kick me out of my own house and continue enjoying the benefits of homeownership without any responsibilities or legal rights. Instead, she lost everything and dramatically downgraded her living situation. Jacob discovered that being someone's boyfriend doesn't automatically make you responsible for their housing costs, and it certainly doesn't give you any legal claim to property you don't own. The best part is watching them try to make their new living situation work. It turns out that when you're both broke and resentful about losing a house, romance becomes secondary to survival. Angela texted me last week asking if I'd consider renting them a room since the house has extra space. I responded with her original message, "Make yourselves comfortable." Then I blocked her number. Angela wanted to live with her boyfriend more than she wanted to stay married to the person who owned the house she was living in. She got exactly what she wished for, just not in the way she expected. The woman who moved her boyfriend into my house learned that homes require owners who can afford mortgage payments. And mortgage payments require income that neither she nor her boyfriend actually had. Perfect justice served by property law and basic economics.